What's good, y'all? It's canon. So Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is deemed official now. And look, it's at a 156 catch weight. The fathers are gonna be promoting this fight. And it's gonna be a barn burner. You know, I was thinking about this fight recently, and I just honestly have to say that this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous in a good way though, because I think this fight is very intriguing. It's very intriguing. You know, obviously Conor Benn is the underdog while Eubank Jr. is not the underdog, and he's the main guy. You know, first of all, Eubank Jr. is so much bigger than Conor Benn. Second of all, Conor Benn, has been dropped. He's been dropped before. He's not looked that good in some points and earlier in his career, but he's made like drastic improvements as a fighter. So I expect this fight to show even more of an improved version of a Conor Benn. And Conor Benn, man. When it comes to this fight, I probably am going to go for Conor Benn because of the 156 catch weight, mostly. I don't think the catch rate is too drastic, but eking 3 pounds may make you super dehydrated. I heard it from Paulie himself, trying to eke up and take down those couple of pounds. So it really depends on if Eubank can comfortably make this weight. I doubt it. I think he's so used to 160 that if he drains himself a little bit more, it may affect him. But who knows? And when it comes to this fight too, Conor Benn is a pressure fighter who likes to utilize head movement. And when he goes up an entire division to fight even a bigger fighter, he's going to deal with longer reach and a more explosive fighter than usual. Like Chris Eubank Jr. is a very explosive fighter. Very explosive. He's not the smartest fighter, but he's a very explosive and agile fighter who has a lot of athleticism and can let go of multiple combinations and just swarm you with punches so fast. I would put him against any fighter who doesn't have that much power and who comes forward. If you come forward against Eubank with not much power, he's just going to run over you, basically, stylistically. And when it comes to Conor Benn is a person who comes forward and who utilizes head movement, but also he has power, but power for 147 and not power for 154 pounds. Well, actually, it's unknown. I'm not sure how powerful he's going to be at 154. It'll be a surprise to me if he shows a lot of power, or at least more power. If he shows more power, I'll definitely pick, Conor Benn to win that. But as I predict right now, Conor Benn, I still think can win this fight, and I think he will. Actually, you may say I'm crazy for saying this, but I think so. I think this is not just simply a case of, this isn't like a bigger fighter, smaller fighter case necessarily. I feel I understand, Kell Brook versus GGG has happened. We saw what happened there, but Eubank doesn't have the power of a GGG. And secondly, too, like Eubank is the older fighter. He's the one with the 2 losses. He may underestimate Conor Benn because Conor Benn's such a small and young fighter. Like, bro, who is this dude who's like almost 7 years younger than me trying to fight me out of nowhere for it? This dude's a straight prospect and he's trying to fight me. I heard that this fight was going to be on the Zone pay-per-view too, which is, it's fine. I watch PBC stuff and it's on pay-per-view, so it's just that, Eddie Hearn himself was like, pay-per-view's a part of the past now, just buy this subscription for a month. That clearly didn't work because most of these fights are on pay-per-view now, so that kind of shows that Al Heyman was doing the right thing the whole time, and it wasn't Eubank. Not fucking Eubank. It wasn't Hearn. Because if Hearn was doing better numbers than Al Heyman, it would have been the case of, Al Heyman probably reverting to using a monthly subscription, I guess. But clearly, Al Heyman had the upper hand in strategy, using the more traditional one. So it was a good experiment. They're probably just going to have the zone subscription for lesser fights than have it just as like a subscription only for for lesser fights. Yeah, I think I said that already. Then have like main fights and big fights for pay-per-view. I assume that they're gonna have the pay-per-view fights on like the zone thing too after it's over, but you're just gonna have to pay for it after the fact. Yeah, I hope so. If it doesn't, man, that'd be freaking annoying. Be irritating, matter of fact. And speaking of this fight too, like, bro, sorry, I was a little distracted. But speaking of this fight, like, Conor Benn and the Eubank skill set in the rivalry too. Okay, so their skill sets are sort of familiar to each other now. Eubank Senior was a more Winkabank gym type fighter, and Eubank Jr. is more of a less of an awkward type style. While Nigel Benn and Conor Benn are kind of the same. They both utilize head movement. They both have that swarmer type style. You know, I think the swarmer type style was very evident in the Gerald McClellan fight. Gerald McClellan definitely got a taste of that swarmer style, with Nigel Benn looking like a 5'9" Mike Tyson at middleweight. So, and Eubank Jr. doesn't fight like Eubank Senior, but they carry themselves in a familiar fashion. It's just that Eubank Jr. is more brash and more, I guess preppy, as I can describe it, you know. And looking at their previous performances too, you know, Liam Williams, Eubank, I will still say this to this day, Eubank struggled with Liam Williams worse. Eubank struggled, okay? Eubank struggled a lot worse with Liam Williams than Demetrius Andrade, no matter how many times he dropped him. If Liam Williams did not drop him, or didn't get dropped, that fight would have been like so close on the scorecards, man. I don't care if the scorecards would have still been 117, 111, 116, 112, 116, 112. That doesn't matter to me. I just feel like Eubank was so much more uncomfortable against Liam Williams than Andrade. Even though Andrade did struggle and lost balance a lot of times, you know, I was losing balance just watching that fight. Matter of fact, I even typed that in the zone highlight video. But you know, he lost balance and stuff and all that ridiculous nonsense. But still, I felt as though Eubank Jr. was very uncomfortable against a pressure type style. You know, he tried to box, but he's just not that good at it. And he was getting outboxed for a lot of the rounds, bro. That's just how I feel. Most of the rounds that he got knocked down to, I felt like he was winning those rounds. Oh, before the drops, of course. Then it becomes a 10-8 round, then you can't get it back unless you drop them too. So really, Eubank Jr.'s standout performance was probably against an old, rotten James DeGale. I say rotten for a reason. James DeGale was a rotten fighter by this point. He was in so many wars. He was already a declining fighter. That's like the common thing with a lot of these super middleweight fighters. They're declining fighters over time. They're just like declining. Badu Jack is a declining fighter. He might do good at cruiserweight, but I feel like he's a declining fighter. Anthony Durrell is a declining fighter. Definitely. Anthony Durrell, James DeGale declined and he retired. George Groves was probably the only one who did not decline, or at least he declined the least, in my opinion. He got hella injuries though. He did get a lot of injuries, so his body was taking a toll on him. And I think that was just like the commonality with that division. And as for Chris Eubank, you know, he's fighting all these guys. You know, he had to bring Chris Algieri out of retirement to knock him out in 4 rounds. He rolled him over like a ball in one of the knockdowns, rolled them over, bro. He fought Adrian Granados. Adrian Granados fought nothing. I did not expect Adrian Granados to fight like that. That was terrible. That was a disappointing performance. I thought Adrian Granados was gonna bring the fight to him, but he did not. He literally fought like a fighter who was being moved up, who was being used as a stepping stone for a prospect. He knocked out Samuel Vargas in 1 round, which was a good performance. He beat Sebastian Fundora, which is a great performance. He handled Chris Van Herdeen. It's just that my issue is, you know, as long as he doesn't move his head repeatedly, like right and left, so Eubank would eventually time him. He needs to be unpredictable. He needs to utilize as many things as possible. Maybe utilize that speed advantage in movement and just have sharp head movement, though, especially because Eubank is a level of power that Conor Benn has not felt in the ring yet. So Even if Eubank isn't like a drastically hard puncher for that division, still that comes into play because Eubank is a fast fighter with those combinations. He's a very vicious fighter. I doubt in this situation, Eubank is going to freeze like he did against Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves. I don't think he's going to freeze this time. I think he's going to be confident enough to the point where he thinks that he's going to beat Benn. I don't know, maybe not, but I think he's going to be fully confident at this point because of how small Benn is. If Benn was the same size, I would disagree. I would be like, he might freeze again. So even so, I have Conor Benn by probably a decision. If Conor, I know Eubank can get hurt, but I know Conor Benn can get hurt too. If Conor Benn wins by a knockout, I'll be surprised because of how good Eubank's chin has been looking. But that's what training can do to you. So let me know your opinions in the comment section about that. I'll move on to the next now. Also hit the notification bell, please. I need y'all to help, subscribe for real. I'm trying to make it to 1,000, so let me know.